The winter meetings are over. Dustin May is a Cardinal, and the Brendan Donovan market is heating up. We will get into that and much more on this episode of the Viva Alberto's podcast.
Smith corks one into right down the line. It may go. Go crazy, folks. Go crazy.
Breeze hits it in the air to center. We will see you tomorrow night.
This is the Viva Alberto's podcast on SB Nation. Welcome into another episode of the Viva Alberto's podcast. I am your host, as always, Jake Wood. I am joined by fellow writers Gabe Simons and Scott Plaza. Fellas, the winter meetings are over, and the Cardinals did a whole lot this year. I'm just kidding. They didn't do anything at the winter meetings, but then again, like 27 other teams really didn't do anything at the meetings either. Your guys' opinions are welcome on this, but is it more, has the winter meetings over the years become more of a spectacle for fans and like the league to just kind of like, hey, checking in on how everyone's doing, not actually where, you know, deals go down, you know, trades are made and like all of the excitement hits a fever pitch of the off season? Like, I feel like whenever we were younger, the winter meetings meant so much more, and now it's just kind of like a dog and pony show kind of situation wrapped around draft centered type things.
Yeah, back in my day, this is when deals got done, right? I this is kind of really my first winter meetings being as tapped in as I was, so I was excited about coming into it really either way. But it seems like it's more of just a way to lay the groundwork. At least that's what it hopefully seems like. That I was hoping that even though a deal didn't get done, at least there was some framework of a deal kind of ready that maybe just needed to cross the finish line. But it looks like we're a little bit away from that too.
I might have a different perspective. I don't remember the winter meetings being a big deal. Maybe I was looking at the offseason wrong. I've never been like, oh, the winter meetings are coming. That means the Cardinals are going to make moves. I don't know if it's because the Cardinals behave differently than other teams, and that, like, broadly speaking, things happened at the winter meetings, but maybe not specifically with the Cardinals. Or maybe I just didn't make the association personally. But when some people were a little frustrated that nothing happened, I was like, I guess. But I've never thought of the winter meetings as this is the time things happen. So this is like a new experience for me, seeing people expect things to happen at the winter meetings, because I don't remember a time where that was like a big mover and shaker. Was the Marcell Ozuna one during the winter meetings?
Yes.
The trade? Okay, that's the only one I can think of off the top of my head. That was a winter meeting move. And if that's anything to go by, I'm glad we didn't make a winter meetings trade. I know there's no association there, but maybe that's why they don't make any moves then, because they're like, this is just bad mojo. But yeah, no, I honestly have never thought of the winter meetings as particularly important, but maybe I was just not paying attention to when moves are made. That's also possible.
Well, yeah, not necessarily just Cardinals centric, but across the landscape of baseball as a whole. I feel like I remember it being a really active time of the year, and it's now sort of become, just like I said, just, teams and their managers or front office executives just kind of being dragged up on stage to talk to MLB Network, which you can clearly tell they really don't want to do, because they're all so afraid to give away any type of leverage in those conversations. And, those guys, like the MLB Network hosts, are obviously paid to get whatever information out of them as possible. And so it's the cat and mouse game of watching them try to get information. And then these guys who clearly have media training understanding, no, I'm not going to actually tell you anything that isn't maybe already a little bit out there. You don't really peel anything away from these. So I don't know. I feel I remember back to 2013, and this is going way back. I'm pretty sure I remember the Red Sox going out and signing Mike Napoli, Shane Victorino, Johnny Gomes, and I think they signed another starting pitcher all in the same day. So I do remember it being a really big deal, or maybe it wasn't on the same day, but it was across 2 or 3 days. And it basically they built a a large chunk of their World Series roster. Maybe it was 2012 into 2013, but I remember them signing a large chunk of their World Series winning roster, like in that winter meetings. And so that's kind of what I'm talking about whenever there's like a bunch of big name, or at least notable name moves, a couple trades, like, and it spanned across 3 or 4 days. And, I just feel like it's really taken a few steps back from what it used to be. And here's another interesting question that I have for you guys. Is there something you would be inclined to consider in terms of like trying to spur on action while the winter meetings are occurring, and while perhaps certain sports fans who may have interests in like football or hockey or basketball, or maybe a little bit more locked in on that, as a way to kind of steal headlines away from those sports in the middle of their season, the way that those sports seem to do in the middle of the baseball season whenever they have their free agency period? Would maybe like an imposed trade deadline on like the second to last day of the winter meetings be something that at least would be intriguing to you? I don't know. Like, obviously I want to leave it as open to interpretation as possible, but from my perspective, if you're going to think about trying to get as many eyes and ears on your sport as possible at a very opportune time, whenever you're trying to get people interested. And we know that baseball is spurred on by deadlines. Like that's the talking point you hear from Major League Baseball. I was like, yeah, you always see movement when there's a deadline to something. And so, is it something you would be interested in seeing to spur some movement whenever more eyes are on the sport?
I would say not this early. If you're going to do a sort of a deadline, you either have to make the winter meetings like closer to February, or the deadline would have to be disassociated from the winter meetings in general, I think, because it's only been like a month. And I just feel like, I don't know, that it just feels too early, especially with how you need to like ease your way into making this the deadline, I think, with how teams operate. So if you're going to do a deadline, I think it has to be closer to the end of the offseason than it is right now. And by the way, I found a historical big winter meetings move that the Cardinals made, which was when Whitey Herzog first came into play, and he immediately traded Ted Simmons, and he got like that was a big like Ted Simmons, and they got Bruce Sutter or something. I don't know, but they made a bunch of moves in there, and the older fans will know because that's before our times. But
Yeah.
Just thought I'd mention that one. But yeah, no, I just think this is too early for a deadline. Personally, that's my opinion.
Yeah, I don't really mind the extended off season. I like being able to take time. It's the off season. Let's take our time to relax. It's going to be a 9-month grinding season anyway. If there were any type of deadline, I think for the players' sake, maybe by spring training, you need to be on a roster in order to have a shot to make the opening day roster or something, just to get, someone like Phil Maton signed earlier, someone who deserves to be signed earlier. I don't know. I don't mind the way that it's set up personally. But yeah, I do wish there's more action, but I'm fine with it the way it is.
What if they moved the winter meetings to the second weekend of January? So like not New Year's Eve, but like the following weekend. And so like it's more like literally the middle of the off season rather than just kind of like the 35% of the way through type of thing. Because I feel like just a month ago we had the GM meetings. And so like you need another, a culmination of teams a month later. How much has like significantly changed in that month's time? Not a whole lot when you look at the landscape, and clearly teams are all focused on like their 40-mans and stuff like that. So like you really have only seen action pick up on free agents and trade chatter over the last 2 to 3 weeks. And so it makes me wonder if like moving the meetings back another month, and then maybe then having that type of like pseudo deadline set in place, because I wonder if it allows teams to kind of like compartmentalize what they're working on. So like, all right, we're focused on trades this first month, and if we can't get any trades done where we want to fill our spots, okay, we're going to pivot to the free agent market the last 2 months of the offseason, and maybe, teams are allowed then to start trading again on April 1st or something like that. So like you have this 2 month, trade freeze or whatever instituted in the offseason. I don't know exactly how it would work. I haven't like conceptualized the whole thing in my brain, but I do wonder if, because we hear baseball talk about how you need deadlines in this era to have teams do things. And I just wonder about, for the health of the sport and getting engagement and, generating interest in the sport in the off season, which is a very important thing to keep your fans interested and engaged. I wonder about something like that, but it's not a for sure thing. I was just curious about what your guys' thoughts would be on it.
Well, I guess that would be the idea to move it back. Maybe start without the deadline just to see, because I feel like more would happen if you had it in January than now, because that's when moves get made anyway. Or like middle of December or the middle of January is when they get made more than early December. And I would be curious if just moving it back without a deadline would just make the winter meetings a lot more exciting. So I would be interested in that personally.
Yeah, and I know you're trying to have eyes on you year round, but if you're going to have a quiet period, why not make it during the holidays? So sure, go ahead and push things back a little bit so that this silent period is, that Thanksgiving to the end of the year, and then take things back up in January and then head out to spring training.
And personally, I think that like front office groups would like really appreciate that, actually, having that kind of quiet, dead period like you're talking about, Scott, around the holidays, whenever they clearly 11 months out of the year, they are so hyper focused on everything baseball related. If that month period of time, they're more focused, like still doing some baseball related activities, but it's not as intensive until after the first of the year hits. And, at that time, most front offices would be like, okay, it's go time. We got to start really building this thing back up. So just a thought. But during the winter meetings, speaking of, the Rule 5 draft occurred, and the Cardinals added a reliever, 28-year-old Matt Pouchard. He is one of 10 names that I wrote about on an article for Viva Albertos, so green check mark for me. I got that one correct. Anyway, what are your guys' thoughts of the addition of Matt Pouchard? And then we'll get into the loss of Cade Winquist here in just a minute.
From what it seems like, I honestly didn't do a lot of research, but a mid-90s fastball, and it seems like 2 above average breaking balls. It looks like it has the potential to play maybe like Kyle Leahy had, his big sweeper, and figuring out what pitch mix worked best for him. Maybe Pouchard could kind of use that pitch mix and become that valuable piece. Who knows? Rule 5, they're Rule 5 eligible for a reason. So we got to hamper our expectations, but I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I think it was a good pickup. When I looked deeper into it, I noticed that his main weakness is that he's currently, or at least last year, he would be bad against left-handed batters, but he should be really good against right-handed batters, which if they can develop another pitch or just improve an existing one, such as his cutter or changeup, maybe he can be just good enough against lefties to not like hamper you. But it was interesting because his fastball, which is like, mid 90s, generates a lot of swing and miss, which I like. You definitely like that in a reliever. But yeah, and they call it a curve, but I've seen some people describe it as like more of a sweeper when he faces a right-handed batter, and it becomes more of a curve when he faces a left-handed batter. But that curve doesn't really seem to work that well against lefties, and he just needs to figure out maybe a breaking pitch that will work against lefties. He didn't get hurt too badly in the minors because he got a lot of swing and miss on the fastball against lefties. But I think it's just a four-seamer, and that doesn't really. I don't know if that's going to work in the majors as well as it did in AAA. But yeah, I'm assuming they drafted him with the intention of figuring out how he could better get out lefties, and if they could figure that out, I think they might have got a nice little find.
Yeah, at 28 years old, he was one of the older players available in the Rule 5 draft. You look at his performance in 2025. He posted a 2.98 FIP in AAA and a near 34% whiff rate, highlighted by what Scott had mentioned already, a mid-90s fastball, 2 distinct breaking pitches that should help him neutralize hitters from both sides of the plate is what I wrote about. He had an xWOBA of 260, expected batting average of 202 against him, expected slug of 294. You go down the line, a strikeout percentage, a healthy strikeout percentage of 28.7%, a little high on the walk rate, 9.1%, but the general rule of thumb that I was told from like those within the industry that follow Rule 5 selections more often is the best way to kind of zone in on a particular player of interest would be like, do they have a strikeout percentage of above 25%, and do they have a walk rate below 10%? Generally, those guys are keyed in on as options. So that's kind of why he fits the bill. He's above 25% strikeout rate, below 10% walk rate. Had a healthy chase percentage of 33.97%, looks really good. So like, yeah, you look down and he's got a healthy pitch mix. The arsenal looks really good. So like, there's a lot to like about Matt Pichard for $100,000 is essentially what the Cardinals had to pay to get him. So when you think of it that way, like, is it make more fiscal and like opportunistic sense to pay $100,000 for a potentially undervalued reliever at AAA, or do you pay $2 million for a veteran reliever who might be looking for a bounce back? I like this direction a little bit more because I do think there is a little bit more of an extended runway that could, appreciate for a career rather than maybe the 1-year stopgap. I'm not saying the 1-year stopgap guy probably also isn't out there or at least on the Cardinals' radar, but I like that they went this route as well. So from that perspective, the Cardinals also lost Cade Winquist, who was selected to the New York Yankees. And I believe this was the first selection the Yankees have made in the Rule 5 draft since, I want to say 2011 was the last time they drafted somebody in the Rule 5 draft. It's been a long time. And Cade Winquist, big fastball, big breaking ball. But there seems to be a lot of questioning or hesitation amongst the industry on whether or not he's actually going to stick in the Yankees bullpen going forward. Obviously, they're for $100,000 just giving Cade Winquist a shot to perform. But were you guys disappointed by the loss of Cade Winquist, or are you less than convinced that he will remain with the Yankees throughout the entire season?
I'll go back to what I said in the last one, that all these guys are Rule 5 eligible for a reason. And I think it's just another example of us becoming a little bit too enamored with name value type of stuff. Jake, he fits your profile of the 25%, 10% K to walk rate. So he's just another one of those guys that was what the Cardinals selected anyway. So yeah, I think it could potentially hurt. He could have that potential to stick in the bullpen, but it looks kind of similar to the fact that we just replaced him with something very similar anyway.
Yeah, I would say I mean, I've never been like that big on the Cade Winquist train, so I can't say I'm too hurt about it. But I do find it interesting the Yankees never draft anyone from the Rule 5, and this is the one they picked. Because I'm looking at his stats and I look at where the Yankees are at in the win curve, and I don't think they can. If he's like struggles, I don't know that they would keep him on the roster all year. So that's the one little thing I'd be like thinking he'll return, is because I can't imagine he'll come in guns blazing and just be good immediately, which I feel like almost has to happen for him to stay on the roster all year on a team like the Yankees, where they can't really just carry a bad pitcher on the roster all year. But if this is the guy that decided to, oh, we're going to use a Rule 5 this time, I mean, maybe they think they got something where he might be good right away. So I don't know. I feel like I should be more bummed than I am, but I've also like, because he's always been old for his level, I've never been like that much of a believer in him. So I guess we'll see.
Also, is like the punishment of having to give them back like that big of a deal to take the risk of selecting somebody in the Rule 5? Like, I don't.
That's true.
It's $50,000 to offer them back to their original team. So yeah, no, it's really
Ooh.
what?
What?
What you
No,
said?
just saying like, ooh, spooky,
Oh,
$50,000.
okay, gotcha. All right, I was confused. Anyway, yeah. So I don't think that Cade Winquest is likely to stick on their roster throughout the entire season. Good for Cade Winquest. I hope that he makes the most of the opportunity, and I hope that he is able to make a major league debut this season with the New York Yankees. I'm not entirely certain that he will. I'm highly skeptical that he will stick, but he does have the big fastball, a an above average breaking pitch to go along with that. So you could see how the Yankees could stash him in their bullpen and maybe work on a third pitch for him going forward. Maybe he eventually transitions back to a starter or like a Michael King type, or perhaps he just, ascends further to the further back part of the bullpen. And that's kind of the route his career goes. Not really sure. There is some malleability there with that profile, but I'm not entirely convinced with the Yankees, the current situation they're in, the pressure that's on them to win this year since they haven't won a World Series since 2009. And Yankees fans just believe that it is the absolute end of the world that they are not experiencing World Series championships every single season. A little bit of understanding from our perspective, because it seems as though some within the Cardinals fan base feel the exact same way. And, fans are allowed to fan however they want to, but it just feels a little unrealistic to look at it that way. And so, obviously the Cardinals are in a little bit different situation than the Yankees are right now, because the expectation isn't that we're trying to push all in for a World Series this year. And, very, very much fine with that. That's the path we've chosen, and much needed at this point. Let's talk about the unfortunate draft news that occurred at the winter meetings. The Cardinals fell to spot number 13 in the lottery whenever most fans were, I don't know. It's a little bit like a Sour Patch Kid, a little bit, I think, because it's sour and then sweet, because the sour part is that you fell backwards in the draft. That really sucked, and you lost, the money associated with that spot in the draft. But you also are now eligible to, be in the draft lottery the next 2 seasons, or have at least, top 6 picks back-to-back seasons if the Cardinals are really bad. So that's the sweet part of it. But, for me, it's kind of a hard sell knowing the talent that's at the top of this year's draft, and knowing that the Cardinals could have been in there on that. And I'm not entirely convinced that they're going to be as bad as some perceive the Cardinals to potentially be going into next season. And so I'm not even certain they would, they're going to have the percentage chance to be in for those top spots. So I'm just I don't know. I would have rather taken the bird in the hand rather than the 2 in the bush, or whatever, how that saying goes. I would have just taken what's, right in front of me, the obvious good thing, rather than hoping on the next 2 drafts to be, spectacular as well.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I would have much preferred we got a top 6 pick this year, because we don't know how these seasons are going to go. And as we experienced with Weatherholt, we might not get in the top 6 anyway, even if we look like we should be a shoo-in, because I don't see the Cardinals being so bad anyway that they have a top 3 or 4 chance. So getting into a likely lottery situation would be 5, 6, and beyond, which you're just as easily likely to fall out of the lottery in that case, I think. So, yeah, I would vastly prefer. I mean, the real hurt is that it's not a top 10 pick, more than that they didn't get a top 6 pick, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Because not a lot, but it took some bad luck to get to where they are, which that's the part that sucks more than anything. I didn't really expect to get in the top 6, but yeah, just it would have been not the perfect scenario would have been we stayed in the top 10, and then we got a top 6 anyway next year. But that's not going to happen, obviously. And it's tough to think, oh, we might get a top 6 pick next year. That's the bright side. Well, at the cost of having 13 now, when I feel like I don't know how next year's draft's talent's going to be. So I don't know. It's just a bummer, but it made me a little bit less bummed about it when I learned that we would have been 11th in the old system. So if you look at it like that, we're only really 2 spots below where we quote unquote should be. So, I mean, that's some sort of something to hang your head on, I guess.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking we should have been 8th and we're 13th instead, well, we really should have been 11th based off record, and we're 13th instead.
Yeah, but Gabe, it's so good because we could have been a top spot, but no, we fell back to 13.
Oh, I know. I'm
Yeah.
just saying, like, if you want to look at like if losing 2 spots is not near as big of a deal as losing 5 spots. So if you look at it like that, where because of the new rules put in place, there's 3 teams ahead of us that should have been way higher in the draft anyway. I mean, depending on your point of view. Uh, so just, I don't know, it just gives me a little bit of comfort knowing that it should have been 11th instead of 8th. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
Yeah, the baseball gods certainly smiled upon the Giants and the Royals this year. The Cardinals moved up, I think, from like 15th or something last year all the way to 5th. So, they maybe there's a little bit of balancing out there as they drop from 11th to 13th or 8th to 13th or whatever.
Have the Giants had enough luck? They won 3 World Series with 3 mostly mediocre teams.
Yeah, but they had to also experience the Farhan Zaidi years where they really like. I get that we probably look at them through analyst eyes and we're like, that idea wasn't so bad, but on paper or at least in practice, whenever it was out on the field, it just was not nearly good enough. And so I think that Giants fans would tell you that while they had it really good, probably around the same time the Cardinals had it, it has not been quite as good recently outside of the one outlier like 2021 season or whatever when they won 100 games. Giants fans probably would tell you that it has not been quite the same. So I don't know.
Tell us that they deserve 50 years of losing with 3 World Series in 6 years or 5 years. How many times is any other team going to win 3 World Series in the 50-year period in general? Anyway,
the Yankees have done it. The Dodgers have done it. Let's see who else.
Yeah, but they were good. The Giants were not the best teams in any of those seasons. Anyway,
they had the most baseball savvy on the team. Okay, they had that inherent ability to know how to win. That's what won, not the best talent on the field. I don't know, whatever.
What happened in the odd years though?
World Series hangover. I don't know.
Anyway, we're getting off track. I just like to shit on the Giants. Honestly.
For sure.
I'm going to be anti-Giants for a while.
I won't invoke the name Travis Ishikawa anywhere near you. It's fine. I'm over it. I'm good. I've forgotten all about it. Anyway, so moving on, the Cardinals have signed right-handed pitcher Dustin May to a 1-year deal with an option for 2027. Gabe, I'm going to let you start because Scott, you've been pounding the drum on your thoughts on Dustin May, and so I'm going to want to directly cross-examine you after you're done talking. So, Gabe, I'll let you get your thoughts out first on this.
I'm excited for that cross-examination. That sounds like you're interrogating.
Waterboard Scott. That's what we're all in favor of.
I'm definitely a fan of the signing. This rotation needed much. I mean, let me rephrase that. There's much needed upside now in the rotation that they just did not have before. I wasn't that down on the rotation prior to signing him, but like you looked at the 5 guys and you're like, I mean, what's the upside? Like a bunch of guys reaching like a 4 ERA. Like there's no ace potential really. You might be really high on Matthew Liberatore. I don't really see like ace in his future, but a solid mid rotation, certainly. But if that's your best upside, I mean, you're kind of like, oh God. So I'm a fan of it just for that reason, where maybe, in pie in the sky dream, he becomes what his stuff has been in the past, where his stuff translates into results. Hopefully, I know his stuff is down, so hopefully it goes back up. But yeah, no, I will say I think Cardinals fans excited not to watch Michaelis pitch. If May repeats his last year, I made this point already. I think they're not going to like watching May pitch either. A 5 ERA pitcher is a 5 ERA pitcher. Like nobody likes watching that kind of pitcher, and I think some fans might be in for a little bit of an awakening if he does not rebound.
Yeah,
and I'm just. Hopefully, people are realistic about like just because he has good stuff doesn't mean he's just going to be fun to watch if his results aren't there.
All right, Scott, floor is yours.
Okay, so if you were on the Viva Alberto's website on Sunday, that was my piece talking about how Dustin May influences the rotation, and it came to I'm thinking the most directly impacted is Andre Palante, even though there's nothing to really state that he's in danger of losing a rotation spot. At least it's been publicly said. But to Gabe's point, like this is better than watching Michaelis pitch. Yeah, 5 ERA pitcher that has lost what 3 miles per hour on a fastball. But I was on Twitter the other day, whether it was yesterday or the day before, just talking about how even if this doesn't work, it's at least just great to see them doing something different. He fits the continued mold of like the different pitching that than we've seen. He has that potential. I know it's been a little bit since we've seen that strikeout stuff, but we're supposed to be entering that second year from Tommy John bump, I believe this year. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it. We haven't heard any money or anything, but 1 year deal is a 1 year deal. In my piece today, I talked about how I'd prefer that even if he pitches phenomenally this year, I would like them to hold on to him and see if they can hammer something out. And even though mutual options never get picked up, maybe that's at least setting some groundwork that like there's already these conversations where that mutual conversation is like, hey, Dustin, if you do well, and hey, the Cardinals, you make the right moves and are moving in the right trajectory, that we at least have some groundwork for something in the future. And I don't want him to just be flipped if he does overperform what we're expecting. But that's just me just being selfish and being excited for something different, I think.
Well, there's also the qualified offer they could offer him if he really pitches that well. So they could get something even if he doesn't return.
True.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and if he pitches again, I mentioned how Liberatore is the potential ace, but that was more said in jest of the current state of the rotation, and that Cardinal Nation does believe May could be that. And again, that's on the cesspool of Twitter. If he pitches well, I mean, the qualifying offer is a discounted rate for a front of the rotation arm. I don't want to call him ace because we've heard Sonny Gray called a Cardinals ace, but a Cardinals ace is different than another team's ace.
Scott, you didn't say the quiet part out loud yet.
And
or maybe
what's that?
maybe it was said in jest, but I saw on Twitter you called Dustin May the 6th starter for the Cardinals, and that's the part that I was gung ho ready to push back on. Like, what are we doing here if we're talking about Dustin May as a 6th starter for the Cardinals?
So I don't mean he's the number 6 in the rotation, but meant the 6th starter in the rotation.
I'm glad you cleared that up. Then
I'm so sorry. Yeah,
oh, guns down. No. I'm good. I'm backing off now.
No, I just meant he fills that 6th starter role, and it was more said to just get one more stab on Mozeliak, saying like, "Hey, we're good. We got 6 starters," and that was more of what I was getting at there.
I do. Go ahead, Gabe.
I was gonna say I actually disagree with you on one point. I think this probably makes Dick Fitz the 6th starter instead of Plante. I think they might run out Plante another year, and Fitz is technically unproven, and I think he'll be the first injury replacement. Obviously, how they do in spring training will dictate this because maybe Matthews just dominates or something. But I think I don't know. I'd be kind of surprised Plante's not in the rotation myself. I think he's got the experience, or whatever you want to call it. I think he's got over Fitz at the moment, but spring training results could change that.
That's where I'd be a little bit opposite, where if they're actually trying to, and it seemed like they were possibly like targeting both Clark and Fitz, like they want him to start. That's where I would see it different.
They will start, but I'm saying I think Fitz is, I don't know, because Palante's like some of his numbers like suggest he got really unlucky, and I'm kind of curious, like in a season like this, you might want to run that out as much as you can. And Fitz only had 10 starts last year. He had a 5 ERA. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he's got to have a really good spring to push his way on personally.
Palante could lead the team in innings too, honestly. I mean, he's got the biggest workload. Yeah,
because Fitz only threw not quite 100 innings, I don't think, last year. And I think some of it was like rehab technically. But yeah, so again, spring training performance I think will matter, but I do think it's Palante's job to lose more than Fitz's.
That's fair.
So the way I see it, I looked at the numbers today, and we're talking about like Matthew Liberatore. I think Matthew Liberatore is your one right now. I don't think he's like a number one in baseball. So like when you're thinking about it, but I think he's the Cardinals' number one starter right now. Through his first 17 starts this season, he had a 3.27 FIP on the season, and in his final 12 starts, he had a 5.38 FIP. And we obviously all watched how that kind of fell apart, but the 3.27 FIP was through the first 97 and a third innings this year. So I think it's reasonable and fair to say after 2 previous seasons pitching out of the bullpen that there was a quote unquote wall he kind of hit with his performance and stuff. I would expect that, him to take another step forward and put together a more complete season going forward. So I do think that Matthew Liberatore was more of the guy we saw the first half of the season than we saw the second half of the season, and we'll see more of that in 2026. I do think that Dustin May probably slots in as your number 2 starter in this scenario. I think McGreevy's your 3, and I actually disagree. I think Richard Fitts is probably your number 4 starter. I think McGreevy and Fitts are probably 2 names that you're going to look towards for bulk and stability and kind of that mid-rotation innings eating type pitchers. And then I think Andre Pallante did himself no favors last season, and I think that he and Kyle Leahy will be battling for that 5th spot in the rotation in spring training because Pallante does have a wealth of experience pitching out of a bullpen, and so he could be a long reliever / swingman type. Pallante could be if Kyle Leahy winds up winning the rotation job out of spring training, and that's kind of how I'm viewing the rotation going into 2026. I also think that it's a good thing because it provides like guys like Quinn Matthews and Bryson Mott's extra time to fully develop themselves. Obviously, we watched Quinn Matthews struggle with command and injuries at the AAA level this season. So I know, Scott, you are a little, not necessarily fully opposed to this, but you would rather them be firing their bullets at the major league level while they're still young and like in growing into the prime of their careers. But Chaim Bloom seems to see it differently and wants these guys fully ready to take their spot once they are graduated to the major leagues. And so it seems like he wants to provide some additional insulation to the young arms that are coming up through the system and give those guys, optimal time to be fully formed. So that way, whenever they get to the major leagues, they're ready to hit the ground running. And so I think that's how it's lining up. Or at least that's how I'm reading the situation. I think Richard Fitts, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I'm pretty certain that he threw a good amount of innings in 2025 and perhaps even in 2024 as well. And so I think there is a good baseline of performance for him. If one of you guys could look that up for me real quick, it's not in front of me.
That's what I was talking about. Fitz threw, I think, less than 100 innings last year because he was injured at points. But he threw a lot. He threw 136 in 2024.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at.
I think you meant 2024 and you said 2025.
Yeah. So
he threw 116 in 2024. He threw 75 combined last year.
I think there is a good baseline of performance in there that even if he's a 5 and dive guy, let's say for the entirety of the season, so 150, that's still a reasonable step up, but I still think I would look at that and say that he could handle that type of workload. We saw Matthew Liberatore take that step from, 87 in 2024 to, I don't know, he pitched 150-ish this season. So I think it's within the realm of possibility that Richard Fitts could do the same thing. And I think that he would provide a higher level of quality performance on top of, a baseline of innings that we cannot reasonably expect from Andre Pallante. Now, obviously, if Pallante comes into spring training and he is locating and effectively establishing his curveball in the zone, generating chases out of the zone with it, and he's able to work his sinker and his four-seamer off of that, then there's a more reasonable discussion to be had about, how these guys all fall in line. But if Pallante comes into next season the way that he was this year and is unable to effectively establish that curveball, and he becomes a two-pitch essentially a one-pitch pitcher, really, because they're both fastballs. It's four-seam sinker, and so major league hitters aren't going to get fooled by two fastballs. It's just which direction is it going is all you have to really pick out. It's at the same speed, and clearly the results were that Pallante got blown up whenever he didn't have good command of his curveball, and so I think that when you look at Richard Fitz and he has the pitch repertoire that he does, I think there's just a more steady, consistent, reliable baseline of performance in his profile than there would be in an Andre Palante. That's why I think that. And again, if Palante comes in, and to his credit, he is able to earn that fifth starter spot out of spring training, it's not the worst thing in the world where Kyle Leahy goes back into the bullpen and you just have, that multi-inning weapon out of the bullpen, ready to help you win whatever games you might be in or ahead of, so there, I guess my main point is that there are options available. It's not just here's the 5 starters. If one of these 5 don't come through, we're in big trouble. I think there is some flexibility within the back half of that rotation to where it could be any type of combination, putting in and out between the bullpen and the rotation.
I'll say that, like, when I say Fitz is like the 6th man, or that's my guess, I guess. What I'm expecting somebody to get hurt too within the first either spring training or month or two. Like what the Cardinals' good health in the last year or two is very unusual. Usually your starters don't stay. Usually somebody like Steven Matz would have been in the rotation by like May, but nobody got hurt. It was crazy. But eventually that'll run out, and I think the Cardinals are going to want a guy like Fitz, depending on how Matthews looks, of course. Ready to step up as soon as somebody gets hurt. And really Fitz and Matthews or Fitz, Matthews, Palante, Leahy, out of there's 7 guys. Everybody else hasn't even pitched in AAA yet. So I feel like they might want to keep as many guys as starting pitchers and stretched out as starters as they can. And I kind of wonder, because I don't think they're going to send Palante down or Leahy, which means in order for them to still start, they would have to make the major league team. Of course, you could be creative in your bullpen usage to keep them stretched out, but that's tough to do, honestly. But yeah, I kind of wonder. Yeah, I remember like back in the day, it was like clockwork. There's always somebody injured in spring training, and the Cardinals usually had a 6th guy ready. Flaherty came into the year, whatever year he came in, and he didn't make the team out of spring training. One start later, he was in the major leagues, and something like that tended to happen every year. And just because I'm putting Fitz in the minors doesn't mean I don't think he's still going to throw 120 innings or 130 innings or whatever in the majors. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I just wanted to bring up one because you kind of spurred on what you said, what you're talking about. You mentioned Steven Matz, and it's like maybe they try to run that plan back again, and maybe they use Andre Palante in the Steven Matz role, where he's kind of like that pseudo 6th starter, where they run a 6-man rotation at certain times whenever there are less off days available early in the season. And then, after that like period passes where there's a few more off days in there, maybe that allows them extra time to determine who their true 5 are and which guy is kind of that swing man between the bullpen and the rotation. I just wonder if that's like if they experienced health and success based off of that process that they used last season, why would they not try to repeat it again this year? Just a thought.
Well, it's like you've been reading my articles. My last 2 have talked about the potential of a 6-man rotation. So look at that.
I don't like to read.
Don't worry, I'll get a book on tape for you.
Perfect.
But no, I think that makes total sense to have the Palante be stretched out in that potential 6-man role, and it doesn't punish anybody. I guess punish is way of demotion out of the rotation, but it kind of seems like Kyle Leahy is all but guaranteed that rotation spot. And Jake, your point of me saying like, oh, now let's rush the prospects. This signing of Dustin May stops that from me. I just knew at that point when I was bringing that up that there was just nobody available in the current organization that could fill that spot. And I kind of ironically used the word stability in the rotation when signing Dustin May. And that's a tough word to use from somebody who hasn't been stable, but it's at least someone we can have expectations for. And the fact that he did throw 130 innings last year, you have to be optimistic that he's going to be healthy enough for 150 innings. Otherwise, then you're looking at this signing like a waste of time and money, but you have to be optimistic that 150 plus is on the table for him.
Yeah, I did want to go back to that the Dustin May thing just for a quick second before we move forward. Shout out to Tyler, who Redbird Farmhands on X is a great follow. If you don't already, please go follow him. He's great for minor league coverage. He talked about whenever the Cardinals signed Dustin May, that Dustin May actually had emergency esophagus surgery, which caused him to lose about 40 pounds of weight, which was also directly associated with a drop in velocity. And so now that he is, both a second year removed from Tommy John and, further away from that esophagus surgery, and is, currently building that weight back up, that perhaps we could see some return of that, lost velocity. He's only 28 years old still. And so there's no reason that he should be experiencing, significant decline in velocity at his age, in his trajectory or arc of his career. He shouldn't be at age-related decline just yet. I get that he's also experienced his fair share of injuries, but at 28 years old, there should still be plenty of gas left in that tank, at least in a one. There's no such thing as a bad 1-year deal. And so if you can get the health of last season, at minimum 22 starts, 137 innings pitched, if he can simply repeat that, but with better results across that period of time, I think we as Cardinals fans will take that far and away above whatever 170, 180 innings of like pure hot garbage that we were watching with Miles Michaelis last season when he was away from Busch Stadium.
You buried the lead. He got the esophagus surgery because he ate a piece of lettuce.
Hey,
that is terrifying.
Whatever redheads,
vegetables will kill you.
Whatever afflicts redheads, that is their own. And I say that as someone with red in their genetic composition. There is plenty of red in my beard if you ever meet me in person. I'm just saying that
I don't recommend.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Scott. I appreciate that. Ginger Guard should be healthy and ready to go going into spring training, and there is plenty of upside and excitement that is around him, but fans should go in with tempered expectations as to what that could inevitably be going into next season. Speaking of what could be going into next season, the rumors for Brendan Donovan are starting to really heat up, and we have seen the San Francisco Giants and the Seattle Mariners emerge as quote unquote front runners for Brendan Donovan's services. Some of the names mentioned in those talks are power hitting outfielder Lazaro Montes and switch pitcher Urangelo Senja. And then from the San Francisco Giants, I believe it was Gavin Kylan, the 18th overall pick from last season, and then Carson Wisenhunt, who also features a 70 grade changeup, is probably one of, if not the best changeups in minor league baseball. Definitely should give Cardinal fans some early Michael Wacha vibes based on its effectiveness against opposite-handed hitters. And so I think that, like, when you hear Brendan Donovan's name being out there, I still feel like, multiple top prospects is good, but I was kind of hoping for, and now that, Dustin May and Richard Fitz are here, I guess there's less of a need for, a mid-rotation or better starting pitcher that I was kind of initially hoping for as a part of a return. And you can just kind of chase whatever best upside is available out there. What are your guys' thoughts on the Brendan Donovan stuff and Katie Woo's reporting recently, and kind of where all of that stands at right now as we look forward to the offseason?
Well, I'll do the shout out to Redbird Farmhands as well, and kind of the rest of X Twitter cesspool that I was doing the research when that Katie Woo story broke. It
Go
seems
cesspool!
Sorry. Yeah. It seems like that most people are leaning towards wanting the Mariners side of the deal. And I'm going to have to go with the majority in that point without, again, having looked too far into it, that it's good that both of those teams are kind of seemingly both on that same tier of what they'd offer. So maybe it'll just take like one more prospect or one more little thing to put that together. But what I don't hope is that Donovan is packaged in anything with Arenado. I think you need to get Donovan's value by himself. If you want to do the Jojo Romero with Arenado, I think that's more palatable for me.
Yeah, I definitely agree that you should have Donovan stand by himself, or at least maybe even with Romero, but
Hmm.
pairing him with Arenado would be a good way to tank his value a little bit. Um, yeah, all the names you threw out, I don't know who they are, but I'm just excited to. I'm just kind of in like a holding pattern, waiting for when it happens, I guess, because I am bad at guessing these kind of value trades, and I don't even want to try because I don't want to be disappointed. And well, no, I mean like, because if I'm like, oh, I'm gonna predict two top 50 prospects. Okay, that would be not a great starting point to not be disappointed, I don't think, because I'd be like, most deals would disappoint me in that context. So I just wanted like, okay, I'm not gonna like look up what his value is according to the rumors, and they're also rumors too, so you have no idea how to, tear that
No,
apart from.
that's reporting. I mean, but
No,
continue.
it's reporting, but they're reporting rumors because they're not like they're throwing names out, but
Source
like they could.
related reporting, and it's not like, random fan on X throwing it out there. I mean, it is Katie Wu, who does have, a level of like respectability and reputability behind her name. So I don't think that she's just throwing these names out willy nilly. I believe that they are names that have actually been discussed in trade talks. But again, continue.
But also, we don't know how seriously they're in discussion. The teams could be like putting it out there, knowing that these players are probably not going to be in the trade. The agents could be putting it out there. We have no idea. I'm not. They're still rumors, just because they talked. Like, I know what you're saying, but like whatever the trade ends up being could be vastly different than anything's been reported right now, and that's kind of the
Yeah.
main point.
No.
And
I'm not saying that this is the general framework of it, but those are just the names that have been. I was just like from the simple straight line baseline of what's happened. Those are names that have been discussed. That's the end of it. Like that's all I was throwing
sure.
out there for.
And I think in trades like these, I would guess there's a lot of names discussed at some point. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't put much stock into some of the stuff, to be honest, because you know, I wait for the move to happen, and I also know the Cardinals have been very good historically about not having leaks, like absurdly good. So I don't think it's coming from the Cardinals side. So I don't know what to really. Yeah, I we'll see. But I'm excited to see what the return is, and I'm the reporting hasn't necessarily made me less or more excited about it, to be honest.
I really liked the approach that you took. If I don't get my hopes up, I can't be disappointed. It's like the high school kid that never tried. If I don't try, I can't disappoint myself.
Well, I have no control over this, so that's part of it.
I guess so. It's a healthy way to approach it, but I prefer the unhealthy way, right, Scott?
Oh, absolutely.
I want
I
to
mean,
I want to live and die by my hypothetical trade ideas that I conjure up in my head that I will then hurt my own feelings over.
well, I'm kind of in the Gabe side where I do the Peter LaFleur. If you don't set goals, then you won't get disappointed when you don't reach them. So
Hey, nobody makes me bleed my own blood. Anyway, so looking forward, what do you guys think are the chances? And we'll wrap this up after this. Let's set a percentage chance on other rumored players that are out there. We'll kind of do this rapid fire to close out the show. So we'll start with the next most talked about name and Jojo Romero. Where are you guys at percentage wise on if how much you think he's going to be traded? Scott, I'll start with you.
before spring training or just in general?
Just in general, let's say, yeah, before spring training. That's a good qualifier.
I'm gonna put 85%.
Okay, Gabe, your thoughts or your percentage?
I'll say the same thing with the Zerpa and for Ferrer deals. Clearly, lefties are very valued on the market right now. So yeah, I would say yes.
I
85.
somewhat agree, but also Ferrer and Serpa had multiple years of control, whereas Romero is just a rental. So a little bit different. I don't expect the package to be nearly as strong. Weirdly enough, I'm a little bit more 50-50 on Romero than most people would seem to be. I get there's a lot more smoke on him, so it seems like it's a lot more like plausible. I just know that relievers tend to be more highly valued at the deadline than they are in the offseason. And so I wonder if the Cardinals might just not hear some names that they want to in those discussions and opt to hold him and take him to the deadline and try to extract as much value at that point rather than in the offseason. But then again, the Cardinals are operating as if, if you come up and match our price tag, we'll move just about anybody, which I'm completely okay with. Let's go the next name down. Wilson Contreras has been generating a lot of buzz recently. Percentage chance you think that Wilson Contreras has moved?
I started at 0% this offseason, and now I'm at 51%.
Interesting.
And it's making me tear up day by day.
I'd say 75%.
Okay.
Still feels like there's a lot of smoke there.
I'm gonna set it right around 65%. I think it's more likely than not, but I do still think that the no trade clause remains as a significant hindrance in any type of potential deal coming to fruition. Now that does not exclude, whatever his quote unquote list is, like to harken back on the Nolan Arenado saga. Like I'm certain that there is a list of like Wilson's own, preferred destinations that he's probably sitting on as well. So let's go next. Let's pivot next to Nolan Arenado. Scott, your percentage that Nolan is traded this offseason.
I would like to be 100%, but each day this goes, I'm trickling further and further down the wrong direction. So I'm going to go to about 93.7%.
0.7. I'm sick of you. Gabe.
If the Cardinals had their way, it'd be 100. Yeah. I'd say, I hate to say 50-50, but I mean, I think I'm not as sure they can find a trade partner personally.
So I like, to Scott's point, I do want to caution Cardinal fans that Nolan Arenado is probably something that's not going to get done until probably February. And I know that's going to cause an audible groan for everybody involved, but you look at it and Alex Bregman and Eugenio Suarez are definitely going to have to go first before a Nolan Arenado deal is consummated. I do think there are teams out there that will value his defense, and I do think that it is still a likely plausible scenario where the Cardinals are willing to eat most, if not basically all of that deal that's remaining to move him out in the name of trying to expand flexibility on the roster. And so I'm sitting at 85% on a Nolan deal being executed this offseason. Let's see. Lars Nootbaar is still a name that is being floated around. And interestingly enough, despite the double heel surgery, teams are still showing varying levels of interest in Lars Nootbaar and don't seem to be as, dissuaded by the injury history as much as they are interested in potentially getting the batter's eye as we transition to a challenge system in baseball. So Scott, your percentage chance on a Lars Nootbaar deal at this point?
I'm going 20% he's traded, and that's the same optimistic chance that the Cardinals have of him being on their opening day roster and healthy.
I'm going to go with 10%. I think it would be kind of foolish to trade him at this point, unless somebody just really likes Lars Nootbaar and wants to overpay for him. So yeah, it's mostly it's really, really trading low. So I would say 10%.
Well, we heard about the report that Texas had interest in Lars Nootbaar, and then they went and got souped up version of Lars Nootbaar and Brandon Nimmo. They've those two players have been compared to each other a lot throughout the last couple of seasons. Both have similar abilities, but Brandon Nimmo's production just far outweighs anything that Lars Nootbaar has done. And so clearly they must have been scared off by the injury problem, or else I think that Texas would have been a likely destination for a Lars Nootbaar. And for me, I think 35% is probably a healthy number. I think it's more likely that he stays than goes, but I do still think that we keep hearing reports of teams being aggressive on outfielders, and if a team is willing to try to patchwork things the first month of the season or so, and then slowly ease Nootbaar back in, so that way once their second half run rolls around, he's fully healthy and ready to go at that point. Not necessarily the same way that Tommy Edman went, but a little bit similar to what we saw with Tommy Edman. Perhaps he's more likely to be a deadline guy, but I still don't think there's a non-zero chance that he's traded in the offseason. And then we'll go one more. Let's do One of the catchers. So I'll start with this. You can name the catcher you think it is, and then the percentage chance that player is traded, because there is still a glut at the catching position. And Katie Woo and Jeff Jones have both talked about how their expectation or belief is that there will be a catcher traded this offseason. So Scott, I'll start with you. Name the catcher, and then the percentage chance you think they get moved.
I don't think any of them honestly get moved this offseason, but if you make me choose, I'm going to say Jimmy Crooks at 1.2%.
Okay.
I agree that if somebody's traded, it seems like Jimmy Crooks. I kind of agree with you in the sense that usually if you trade a guy like Crooks, you're going for MLB ready help. But he doesn't have like a ton of value. So it'd be like a short-term MLB help, which doesn't really seem like something the Cardinals would do. I'd place it higher odds than that, but it'd be probably 40%. Just because they have so many catchers that they got to be traded at some point. And
I think that you guys are both correct, and it's a clean sweep across the board. I think it is Jimmy Crooks that is the one that would be traded. I think that he's kind of caught in between because, let's walk down this path one more time. If Ivan Herrera is going to be your quote-unquote everyday catcher, then you don't really want to stall or diminish a prospect who is ready to ascend to the major leagues in a full-time capacity like a Jimmy Crooks. And so you're also not going to have Jimmy split time at AAA with another top catching prospect. You're kind of giving only each catcher half the opportunities that they need to fully develop into major league caliber catchers. And so I think because of where Jimmy is, he kind of falls and he's kind of caught in between those two eras feels wrong, but like those time frames between Ivan Herrera and Leo Bernal. And then I think that if Ivan Herrera doesn't take hold at the catcher position and winds up being more of maybe a first baseman, DH, left fielder, whatever the Cardinals decide to do with him, then Pedro Pages is going to be their stopgap to a Leo Bernal. I know that fans would prefer Pedro Pages being traded because they don't believe in his hit tool to grow into anything more than it already is, or they expect it to get worse. I don't know. I don't see the same thing. I think he's capable of being a league average hitter as a catcher. And I think the Cardinals are comfortable and confident in his game calling, his rapport with the pitching staff. I think that he provides that safety blanket type of presence back there behind the plate for pitchers. And I think the Cardinals value and trust him and what he does and what he brings to the table. And so I think the Cardinals would be their first fallback option that they would lean into until Leo Bernal is ready to ascend to the major leagues. Therefore, I think that Jimmy Crooks is the most likely catcher to be traded. And I also think that it would be something that they might explore. You talked about packaging Brendan Donovan to Nolan Arenado. I think that's a pitfall. I think that's something that, not that Bloom decided to do that whenever he was in Boston, but I think it's similar to the Mookie Betts and attaching David Price to him. That would remind me of that, and I don't think that he's willing to do that type of thing again. So I think that Jimmy Crooks maybe makes more sense as a piece, as a surplus with some value that they could attach to a Nolan Arenado to get some sort of interesting return, maybe a different position player at a different position, maybe another pitcher with a little bit of interesting upside, or maybe a lottery ticket type, maybe something like that. But it's adding to the depressed asset and trying to get a little bit more. And I think that the Cardinals, left-handed hitting catcher. The Cardinals don't need more left-handed hitters, and I think that works against Jimmy in this situation, unfortunately. He does have the 6 years of control. That's valuable to teams. He is known as a good defender. He's also, known as someone who's good with a pitching staff. So, there are things to like about a Jimmy Crooks, even if you don't really have the time and the development opportunity to offer him to develop into that major league catcher. I think if you attached him with a Nolan Arenado, it would help generate an interesting return for Nolan Arenado. And so I think with that, I'm going to put the chances of a Jimmy Crooks trade at 65% this offseason.
I will say, I think the Harry Ford trade is a bad sign. That does not give me a lot of hope that Crooks will be highly valued on the market. I think there's a lot of catching prospects in the top 100.
The thing is, with Harry Ford, he's not widely viewed as a catcher. A lot of them see him as a high on-base percentage type hitter, and is lacking in true catcher traits that would like allow him to be a catcher long term. And so I think those are different profiles. Whereas Jimmy Crooks is projected to be like a I don't know if he's an everyday catcher at this point, but he's more projected to be that catcher, which, as we know, at a high valued position like catcher, that it would be a more valuable commodity than Harry Ford, who's a little bit more like Ivan Herrera, whereas the bat is the carrying tool and the playing tool, like what you're interested in, and you're not entirely sure about the position.
I feel like the offensive guy would be more valued in a trade, though. I know what you're saying, but I don't think it's like he's like guaranteed to move off a catcher. Like there's a chance he stays a catcher.
Well,
and I don't know. I'm just not like the fact that he got traded for a good left-handed reliever, but not like super dominant. I'm a little worried that there's not really a market for any of the catchers.
And I'm not talking about him getting like a top 100 prospect in return. I'm just talking about maybe a DSL like pitcher or outfielder with an interesting tool or two, and you attach him to Arenado, and that's like that lottery ticket is what you're trying to get in return. I don't think it's going to be anything that's really going to wow anybody or blow your socks off, but I do think it is something that might make a team like make an Arenado trade a little bit more palatable.
But he is a top 100 prospect, at least according to Fangraphs. That's the thing. Like you want.
Yeah, I take Fangraphs rating with a grain of salt. It's a different like way of evaluating, but sure, continue.
No, I'm just saying, like I don't know if that he, is actually a top 100 prospect, but he's on the fringes at the least, and you would hope a comparable value would return. And I don't know if that's out there because I think for whatever reason the catching market is oversaturated. At least the prospect version of catchers seems oversaturated. So I don't know who's going after Jimmy Crooks right now, especially because I don't know that his ceiling is considered that high.
Well, and part of the reason I put his percent at that 1.2 is that caveat that I'm talking about by spring training, because we're going to see the Cardinals, I anticipate, wanting to go in with as many catchers as possible. And then if Herrera remains that question, then you at least have a major league ready defensive catcher in Jimmy Crooks. I think the Joel Pozo train is, I think it's kind of like he's going to just be on the AAA roster and be there. I don't think he's going to really have another role like he did last year. I think it's going to be more about the Pages, Crooks, Bernal train, just kind of moving that around.
Well, don't forget that they used Pozo as like a pinch hitter more than they did as well.
True, yeah.
As a catcher. And so he has the ability to also catch first base, DH, like in that type of, I don't know, pseudo utility role, I guess. But he would provide a certain level of protection on the bench should Herrera not really follow through, be able to follow through as a catcher. And so I think that also the other thing to consider is that he has the split contract, so there is the flexibility there. Again, all of these points are, what kind of occurs in spring training and the direction the Cardinals ultimately go with it. But I do think that there is and probably if he winds up going down to AAA, you're much more okay with Joel Pozo playing 20% of the time to Bernal's 80% of the time, rather than, watching Crooks and Bernal split 50-50. And that's 3 games a week each. That doesn't feel like enough for a young catcher who's trying to develop and ascend to the major leagues, in my opinion.
I don't think Bernal's playing an inning in the majors next year.
No. I'm saying at AAA.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's why I think maybe they'll keep Crooks, is because I think if Herrera gets hurt or has to move, I think Crooks is the guy, not Paz. I think maybe it'll be 50-50, but I think they'll want to see what Crooks had if they keep him, mind you. If they keep him. If they plan him not to be part of the plan, then they'll probably trade him in some way. But if he makes it to opening day, still in the Cardinals organization, I absolutely think Crooks is the backup plan with an injury and not Pozo or Bernal, at least at first.
I don't think that, even though it's a small sample size, I don't think that Crooks did enough offensively to leapfrog himself over Pages and how the Cardinals view him. Now, obviously, that's just my opinion and how I'm reading the situation. I could always be wrong on that, but I think that the Cardinals and Ollie Marmol specifically are very high on Page's defensive ability and what he brings to a pitching staff. And so I think that he would lean on his more known quantity in a Pedro Pages than he would more uncertainty, though he likes Crooks. I think he likes Pages just a little bit more.
I'm going to make an unfair comparison, and I admit that, but if you based it off of how like Mason Wynn did in his first taste of the major leagues, then he absolutely shouldn't have made the opening day roster in 2024. So it's possible he looks like a little better hitter against major league competition, and he could like I don't expect him to make the major league roster, but I'm saying if somebody gets hurt, maybe he's killing in AAA. I think he's the plan A if an injury happens. That's just me, and I don't think necessarily like 20. Well, how many games did he play? He had like 46 plate appearances. That's nothing. I don't think that's going to influence their decision personally.
Gabe, that's an unfair comparison, and how dare you make that one? I'm so beside myself right now. Anyway, so like, I guess my follow-up question would be, do you think that Jimmy Crooks has 20 home run upside to him? Because that's why I think that it's a different circumstance with Mason Wynn, because I still think that he has 20 home run upside to his like 2020 ability, and that's why you just allow that other tool to continue to develop at the major league level. Whereas I'm not sure that Jimmy Crooks' offensive ceiling or upside is similar to Mason Wynn's. And so, and I also don't know that the defense is as good. Like, it's hard to compare a catcher to a shortstop, but I don't know that Crooks is on the same level as Mason Wynn's defensive acumen, if that makes sense.
Right. I don't know that Mason Wynn made the roster because he had 20 home run upside that year, though.
No, but you could see it. You can see in the athleticism, the swing decisions, the ability to impact the baseball whenever he's fully healthy. Obviously, not on a torn MCL or meniscus, whatever it was. You can still see where the upside is, and obviously he did it in the minor leagues too. He was a 20 home run hitter in AAA, I believe it was, and so that's success at the upper minor league level, and so there's reason to, once he adjusts to the major league level, it's reasonable to assume that he will get to that at some point in his career as well. Whereas I'm not certain that Jimmy Crooks hits at that same level, nor do I think that he has the same floor as like that Gold Glove caliber catcher. I think Jimmy Crooks is a good above average catcher, but I'm not certain that he's going to ever walk away with gold.
Yeah, no, they're, like I said, it's a bad comparison because they're different kinds of prospects, and catcher defense is so hard to grade, whereas I think shortstop defense is a lot easier to grade. So you kind of knew Mason Wynn had that elite potential in him, whereas Crooks, I mean, I've heard conflicting reports throughout his entire minor league career. Sometimes people say he's going to be carried by his defense. Some people say he's good enough to stick a catcher or something. So I have no idea how good his defense actually is.
Right.
But I just I'm not even that high on Crooks, by the way. I just think that he's absolutely like plan B for an injury, unless they don't think of him as plan B, in which case they will probably trade him this offseason. So I think it's either or. Whereas if he makes it to the opening day, I think he's the guy who's getting called up and getting at least half the playing time, or maybe 40%. And I don't necessarily think they lean on Paz again, just because Crooks was not ready last year, and Pozo's just, your quadruple A catcher. So Paz was the best option. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
The good news is we're going to have a lot more of these discussions, and more things are going to unfold, and the picture is going to become a lot more clearer as we go forward. And with that, Scott, Gabe, I want to thank you guys obviously for being here. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Viva Albertos podcast. We will talk to you guys again next week. Have a great day, and thanks for listening. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Viva Albertos podcast. Please leave a rate and review on your favorite platform and turn on those bell notifications so you can be notified the moment our newest episode is released. As always, make sure to give us a follow on X, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Facebook. Just type in Viva Albertos on any platform to find us. Have a great day, and thanks for listening.